Welcome everybody to this ReSourceYYC Lunch and Learn online. So ReSourceYYC is a co-working community in Calgary, and this is one of our events to encourage learning and networking between our members. Today our presenter is Sheila Carruthers, who is an FCMC and who is also an SCMP. SCMP.
I'll explain.
And I will hand it over to her so she can explain.
You wouldn't think that Rose knows me. Hi, everyone. So yes, I'll introduce myself. That's probably the easiest way. Can you see the slides okay? Has the screen come up? Nodding. Great. Thank you. So I am Sheila Carruthers. I'm a member at ReSourceYYC and find it a very useful office sharing space, particularly amongst professionals. So check it out if you haven't. Yeah, I've got my MBA, got that quite a long time ago. FCMC stands for Fellow or Certified Management Consultant. Fellow just means you've been around a long time and given back to the professional community. I'm also a strategic communication management professional, which is an ISO certified, as is FCMC, ISO certified professional designation. So I've been an independent management consultant for about 15 years. And in my consulting practice, you can see a whole list of stuff that I do there. I also am an instructor and assessor for professional associations and for university courses. And prior to going out as an independent consultant, I managed multi-million-dollar charitable giving foundations. I still volunteer on nonprofit boards and communities, and the two most recent ones have been my professional associations with IABC International on their international board and CMC Alberta on various committees, and I've also sat on their board. So in all of my background, I have written a lot of proposals, but I've also reviewed a lot of proposals, particularly when I was running the charitable foundations, literally thousands each year. So I'm hoping that this presentation will trigger a few thoughts for you, maybe give you a few tips, and I'm hoping that we can all learn from each other as well. So I did prepare a handout, and you should have received that. They're just my suggestions. They're not nailed down because there's so many different situations and thereby variables in any proposal that's being written. And I'm always looking to improve. So if you have any tips or hints, I'd love to hear those as well. Thank you. So jumping straight in. First of all, I'd really like to know if anyone would like to go off mute and just quickly tell me, where do you find your opportunities? Anyone willing to be brave enough? Well, let's assume that you find your opportunities in different places, and we will talk about those. And so, you know, you can jump out, you know, in any time. So, okay, I'll turn these into rhetorical questions if you're all so shy. Consider what methods you use to assess if it's worth your while submitting a proposal. To me, that's a key one. And in fact, about 15 minutes before this session this morning, I was talking with one of my consulting colleagues and asked her, what is your top tip? And she said, it's the assessing if it's worth your while submitting a proposal. It's so frustrating if we're wasting our time preparing proposals for work that's outside of our abilities and or availability, and or if the proposal is unclear as to what it's really wanting. So then it's forcing us to make many assumptions. And if we're not able to clarify those assumptions, we could well be wasting a lot of time submitting for something that is not wanted. So that's where my third question, we can turn it into rhetorical, which is, how do you convince prospects that you are their best option? And that is where, considering your proposal, what is it that excites you about that proposal, but also, or that RFP or that opportunity, but how is it that you're going to be able to communicate with them best and express to them that you are the best option? I'll take one step backwards because I also wanted to mention, be sure that it is an ethical prospective piece of work, because if it's not ethical, then don't even touch it with a barge pole, not even worth it. And consider whether you've got the subject matter expertise, the knowledge, the experience, and as I mentioned, your availability to be able to actually do the work, though that can be a moving target, because quite often I find that you go through this entire process and it's hurry up and wait, where you've submitted your proposal, the deadline's gone, and then depending on who it is that's reviewing, it could take quite a while before you even hear back from them. And you might be thinking, well, it's taken so long, I'm probably not in the running. But it really depends on their processes at the back end, which is another indication as to whether you actually want to work with these people. But it could be that it's very different, the team that are reviewing the proposal, and it could be multi-layers of people that are reviewing the proposals before they choose, who's going to come in and make, a stand-up proposal for getting the work. And make sure that, well, I'll talk about it in a minute, about clarifying questions before submitting your proposal. Ideally, there's an opportunity so that you can clarify your questions before the proposal is submitted. So moving right along, proposals are very persuasive documents, or they should be, because your objective is indeed to convince the reader of the suitability of the course of action that you are proposing and your worthiness to complete the work that they need or want or think that they need. So they're generally written for an external audience, but they might also be written for internal purposes, where often in large corporations and large organizations such as government entities, there'll be internal teams of consultants, and quite often they are set up in one department, and then they are sent out to work with different departments in the organization. But they should still be a proposal, clarification of assumptions. And so any proposal should be including, so as I say, proposals may be solicited or they might be unsolicited as well. You may get someone that says, hey, I know that you've got this subject matter expertise, very interested to receive a proposal from you. Those are the best kinds, because you've already eliminated a lot of the effort on communicating what you are good at, because they already know that, otherwise they wouldn't be contacting you, unless you're the fluff. Don't know if you ever watched Vince Vaughn's movie, it's about 5 years ago or more now, and in it, where he was a management consultant, and he explains about the fluff, where everybody needs to get 3 proposals. That's what the boss always wants, a minimum, particularly if it's a government entity, they must have a minimum of 3 different bids. So it could be that if they've only received 1, they go actively looking for the other 2, but they know they want that 1. So you become the fluff. So try and dig in and find out if you are the fluff, because nobody wants to be the fluff. As I mentioned, it needs to be persuasive, and make sure that you're writing it for your specific audience, so that you're making the language is appropriate. It matches, you meet them where they are, take them to where you want them to be. They want to read, they don't want to read back exactly what they wrote in the RFP. What they want to see is that you've read it, you've listened, and you're able to communicate back to them in similar language. And I've put here that proposals can vary in length and the amount of content. Ideally, whoever is writing the RFP has identified what the length will be or the amount of content. Actually, I don't mean ideally, because frankly, it's not about the length, it's about the content. But if you're only given 2 pages limit to write your proposal, then that's because they're expecting a lot of them and they don't have time to review mega proposals. It's also an advantage for you because it means that they're not interested in stealing any of your ideas, which unfortunately does happen. My last comment here is it must be delivered on time. If you are 1 minute past the deadline, then it will not be accepted at many organizations if they have been very bureaucratic and stipulated the date and time by which their proposal must be submitted. And so it will most likely be rejected or completely ignored. So there's different types of proposals. There's formal proposals, which is you could be responding, I've already mentioned, sorry, I'm using acronyms, request for proposal, an RFP, or it could be a request for qualifications. Now, the difference between the two is that a proposal is normally for in real time for a specific project right here and now, whereas a request for qualifications is where an organization is looking for organizations or individuals that have the right qualifications that they know they're going to need, but not right away. So they don't have the projects identified yet, but they want to have a pre-screen of people with these qualifications so that when they do have projects, it quickens up the process. It speeds it up by them being able to send out a RFP to their pre-qualified list of candidates. It could also be that you're invited to submit a letter of interest. And again, a short letter of interest is just that. It's just saying, we're interested in the work. Here's our qualifications. Let us know if you want to proceed. And that's to avoid wasting people's time. So that's very much appreciated. And then you've got statement of work or even a memorandum of understanding. And frankly, it's all around terminology. So again, you're matching your language to their language. And a statement of work is sort of like a letter of interest, but normally it goes into a lot more detail. And a memorandum of understanding is starting to get to the agreement stage already. And that's when there's already a level of trust in the relationship. A memorandum of understanding is still a big opportunity for you to clarify assumptions, very important. Clarify your own assumptions, but also invite the prospective client to clarify theirs. So then there's the proposal structure, and that's when you get the, sure, just send me a proposal. And if they say, send me a brief proposal, I've put down a limit 2 to 6 pages, as an indication. And this could be in a small business situation. Again, they don't want a lot of information, but you can always add in addendums, such as copies of your bios in the addendums, but you put, in the content of the main structure, you put the key information that you want to portray. A standard proposal, if it's, and here I'm just talking about a standard one would be for, say, a small or medium-sized business, and a fairly simple project, a standard 6 to 10 pages. But if it's more comprehensive, and particularly this is if you're working with a government entity or a large corporation, they are looking, or a large organization where they're looking for a more complicated project, then it could be more comprehensive, and that would be more than 11 pages. So this is your opportunity where you're kicking off your discussions to define the project and its parameters. And often this occurs when there's, as I say, there's a sufficient level of trust. Your proposal type, I've talked about pages, but it could be a Word, it could be in Word, it could be a PowerPoint format. There's many consulting agencies that choose to use the PowerPoint format where they've got preset templates and lots of good visuals that really wow everybody, and they do, and a lot less text. It's amazing how, to me, that covers everything, but that's what a lot of people are looking for. So let's dig into structure, though I see that there's a few comments in the chat. If Rosemary, you'll let me know if there's anything that you need to stop me on. We've got her there. So proposal structure. So I'm really walking through the handout that I already sent you. And as I say, these are my suggestions. And so it's not in any way my attempt to cover all situations, but more to identify what are typical topics that would be needed to be discussed when you are developing your proposal. So the cover letter. The cover letter is an opportunity to introduce yourself, to introduce your team, your company, and everybody's competencies. So be sure to include the name of the prospect's contact person, if it's known, and make it friendly and invite your prospect to let you know if they have any questions. The cover letter could be in the form of an email, if the proposal attached is going to be sent with an email, or it can be a separate letter that's submitted alongside your proposal. And normally that's written last. So then you've got your cover page. Even if it's on your cover letter, be sure to include your contact information on your proposal, so there is absolutely no confusion as to whose proposal is yours. You can't, honestly, I can't begin to tell you how many times I have had to grapple and find out who on earth sent this one, particularly if you've got somebody that's receiving all of the proposals and they're getting a lot of them, and they're going to be, maybe they're still printing them off, or they're putting them into a special folder. So they've taken them away from the email that got sent with the attached proposal, and they might then lose any connection to who submitted it. So if you don't have all of your details on your cover page and or in the bottom top, in the header or footer of your proposal, then there's no way of them contacting you. So guess what's going to happen to your proposal? All that hard work straight out. So make sure that you're putting in as well, what's the project title and what's the purpose as the RFP or whoever the prospective client has stated. And then put in your name and contact information of the prospect to whom you're submitting the proposal, as well as yours. And then date your proposal. What's the date that it's being submitted? And we'll get to that in a little while, but think about it that you may want to put a time limit on how long your proposal is going to be relevant at that price and that quote. Because if someone calls you up 2 years later and says, still got your proposal, okay, we're ready to go on it now, things have changed. So you may want to put a deadline on, whether that proposal will be standing forever, or if it will be acceptable for, say, 60 days or 90 days or 30 days. So my other key piece here, and this is one of my own belly whacks, is that you should use your own company name and logo if you have a logo. But really, I do not, I don't recommend that you add your prospective client's logo without their permission. Hang on. Sorry. Without their permission. And be sure that your logo is as high resolution as possible so that it's very clear, because high quality, high resolution shows that it's a professional logo. But by putting in their logo, just making an assumption, it's often lower quality, because if you haven't got permission to use it, then it means that you've taken it off the web. And they could have changed their logo, but also they don't want to see themselves right there. They want to see who you are. What are you going to do for them? They do want to see themselves in everything that you're writing, but here, this is you. So the executive summary, now it's thought to summarize an entire document, and that might be the case when you're writing a large report, but in a proposal, the executive summary is where you sell yourself and the proposed solution. So it should cover the following: the concise introduction. So in other words, your introduction needs to be compelling enough to grab your prospective client's attention right away, and it focuses on the client. This is not where you're introducing your team and or your company. Then it's the situation. This is where at a very high level, you're covering your understanding of the situation. And you could include some high level research or refer to related experience and work that you have done in the past and the results of those. Here's where you're focusing on the client and their challenge. So then you've got the proposed approach. So this is where you're outlining the solution that your team proposes, and you could cite any challenges or opportunities that, that this is implying, and outline how it will work and the benefits that the client can expect. So keep it, as I say, very high level, but provide enough detail to give your clients a sense of relief and get them excited about the results to come. And then it's the why us, and this is where you get to boast about you. And this is where you're showcasing your unique qualifications and competencies, and showing, you know, who's the team, you know, solidify in their mind why you are the best, you know, the best option for them. So unless you're following an RFP guide on the proposal structure, try to keep the executive summary to 1 page. But if you have in the RFP guide specifics on number of, you know, word count or number of pages, follow that precisely. So then you get to the proposed approach to achieve the solution. So this is where you can detail your approach to solving the client's challenges, but don't give away, you know, the baby in the bathwater, you know, don't throw it away. You keep to the process more than giving them a recommended solution, because you don't know yet what the solution is going to be. But so show them what your process is going to be. And this can be identifying that, you know, what research you would suggest be done, and that you have the competencies to do it, how you would undertake your assessments, your diagnostic process, the process of being that you're going to provide an interim report, and how often you're going to provide those reports, and the action plan that they're going to be ending up with, and or the implementation that they're going to be ending up with, and how you're going to close out the project. I'll get into that in a little bit more. I'm not seeing anyone putting their hands up yet, so I'm just going to keep prattling if that's okay. So then you've got the next section is the proposed approach, sorry, the deliverables, rereading my top line. And this is where you're describing exactly what's included in the proposal, what the client can expect to receive from you. For example, it could be an organization's audit. It could be a competitive analysis. It could be a marketing communication plan. It could be a strategic plan. You know, whatever it is that the client is looking for you to provide to them. It may be that they honestly don't know yet what they want, and they've kept it very broad. And so that's where you can indicate that, you know, that these are the processes that we'll go through to help you to identify exactly what the situation is, or the scope of further work. So this is where provide some details around each deliverable that you're going to do, you know, like where's your research sources that you would use, and if there's a cost involved with that, you know, indicate that very clearly, particularly if it's accessing industry research. And from the client side, you know, who's going to be involved, asking that actually is really key, but also identifying every single person that's going to be involved on your team. Doesn't matter what level they're at. It could be that you've got a senior partner who is going to be doing quality control. That's key. Show them that and show their competence. But you can also get juniors that are following checklists. So no one likes surprises when they suddenly find a junior doing work that they assumed the partner level was going to be doing. So make it very clear who's going to do what and what your process is for quality control. Then you've got your timelines and your milestones. So breaking the project into phases, and it could be called stage gating or phase gating. So you're putting what are the key events and the deliverables in a table. That's what I like to do, or a process chart, which is, you know, such as a high level version of a Gantt chart, so that it's very clear how each deliverable, how long it will take to achieve, and what the milestone will be for, such as a key performance indicator, so that people know how you will be checking in. And it could be that what will success look like? So, you know, identifying what success will look like and what are the milestones to achieve that. Fees and expenses we'll talk about on the next slide. So then, as I mentioned about the about us, explain who you are, what you do, why you exist, what drives you, what's your purpose, and ideally shape it, sort of align it, show how your purpose aligns with the prospective clients, their culture and their style. And then this is a key part where you're putting in some examples of your past work, your case studies, getting testimonials from your past clients. And so that would be such as putting in a list of very high level, what's the name of some projects that you've worked on, particularly relevant work for the work that you're proposing on. And then what's the objectives of those proposals, of those projects, and how you actually achieved them? What were the specifics? And then if you've got client testimonials, that's great to add in a few quotes there. Then you've got your explaining about your fees and your expenses. And this is where I'll tell you, my team, we put in this big bid once and we didn't get it. And so we asked for feedback afterwards. And we were told that now in the proposal or the RFP, it asked for the fee structure and it said your hourly rate as well as, your entire budget rate. And so we put in the budget rate, but we didn't break down each individual member of the team's hourly rate. And that was the one thing that they picked up on, and it was a government entity. And so they gave the project to someone else. And when we were going through the feedback with them, you could hear them almost apologizing because they were realizing that our proposal was actually awesome. We reckon so, and we could tell that they thought so too. So I think they were kind of kicking themselves, but we were kicking ourselves as well because that was such a minor detail, but it was a key one for them. And that is how a lot of people will review proposals. So then remember to establish a payment structure, so that you're saying, okay, upon signature of agreement to proceed, we're expecting 25% of the total project will be paid. And then invoices will be submitted when deliverables have achieved, and identify exactly what those will be. So often there's a 10% or so holdback that can only be invoiced once all deliverables have been completed and that the client has signed off on it. So, consider that as well. And that could be one of your questions to clarify. Then it's identifying what expenses you're anticipating, what expenses are included in your proposal, and how you would handle any other expenses. I normally have a paragraph in there that says that travel and other expenses will only be charged and incurred after gaining written approval from the client to incur those expenses. So I find that normally covers off on that. Be sure to add in applicable sales taxes. I've seen this happen where people have quoted, not indicated that sales tax is over and above, and then been held to the quote. So that's meant they've had to eat the cost, of the taxes. And then billing based on, as I mentioned, the milestones. Then the proposal's validity, that's what I mentioned a little bit earlier. It could be that you're saying your proposal's validity is just 30 days, or it could be up to 90 days. It's entirely up to you. But say they only come back to you after 90 days or whatever your limit is, then that's your opportunity to renegotiate. So past clients' references. As I mentioned about the case study, examples of past work are really great. And another method, or in addition to having the testimonials, is to add in references from your past clients, particularly ones that have projects that you've done with them that are relevant or close to what you're proposing to do for this new prospective client. And a lot of agencies will put in the logos of their clients rather than just listing the names. And I do find that that's visually quite more pleasing and it captures people's eyes. So think about that. But also look and see whether references at this point are required. Be sure to get anybody who's you're putting a testimonial or a reference from them, get their permission before giving out anybody's name and contact information. There's nothing worse than nasty surprises where, you know, they're not expecting the call, and so you can't expect such a glowing reference from them. Now, I mentioned about agreement to proceed, and this is what this could be a separate contract, but make it easy. Make it easy for your prospective client to say, great, do it. And that means that having your proposal enough information about your terms and your conditions so that you are able to then put a signature block for you to sign as well as your prospective client. It should be that there's also a section for the date that it was signed, and you could ask that there also be a witness signature. So thinking about that agreement, you know, this is where you may want to clarify what's the legal jurisdiction, what's your exit strategy for your project termination, and that be that it could be what happens if either party wants to end the relationship prematurely, and how is that going to be managed. And it could be that it's ending for cause or without cause. Got to be careful on that. And how you're going to manage confidential materials, and how the client's going to manage confidential materials. Another key section could be intellectual property and copyright, clarifying those so that you don't want any sticky conversations or even legal cases about who owns the report or the results. You might want a non-compete clause. They might want a non-compete clause. Project scope creep, that's an absolutely key one. How are you going to manage scope creep? And that really helps you to also keep remembering that scope creep happens. And so how much are you going to allow, and how much are you what's the trigger for when you're going to have to say, okay, let's stop. There's some scope creep in the project now. This is outside of the scope. We need to make an addendum to this, an amendment to our agreement. But as I say, make it as simple as possible for everybody to be able to move on with the project, so that if everyone's okay without having complicated contracts, sign the document and off they go. I had that about a month ago. I didn't expect it. And literally it was within an hour or two of me submitting the proposal, it was signed and returned, and they said, great, get going. So yikes, gotta get going on this one. I'm still prattling. I'm not hearing anyone, so I'm just going to keep prattling. Okay, so contract terms and conditions. And this is where usually there's terms and conditions that are included in a proposal. And I've just mentioned quite a few of these, in fact. So in fact, yeah, I've just mentioned all of these. Well, code of ethics is another absolutely key one. If you have a ethical code for yourself, your organization, for your profession, mention it, because you want to gain the prospective client's trust as soon as possible and as much as possible. And so you can add it as an attachment if your profession or your organization has a code of ethics. So mention it, but also keep, provide an entire copy of it, because they don't know it, and they won't know what it says. But if they see it, they're probably not going to read it in detail. But it adds that level of trust. I think everything else I covered already on that slide. So moving right on. Professional designations. So this is what I put in my proposals. I put it a little more specifically, so I've written this in very general terms. And this is where, if you have any type of professional designation, be sure that you put in terminology around this. It's sort of like this. You will note this proposal includes an individual, or you could say all of the team, or whatever's relevant, who maintains professional membership in, put in the name of the professional association, and abides by its ethical code. And then you can cite all of your other professional qualifications as well. And as I say, mention your profession's ethical code. So here's some tips. First of all, it may seem obvious, but so often the problem is when someone does not carefully and thoroughly read the RFP. Play it back as well and look at what are the key requirements and statements and talk them over, and be sure that you set up a checklist to be sure that in your proposal, everything in the RFP, including the hourly rate, if that's what they're asking for, is included in your proposal. Don't assume that it's not relevant, as you heard from me. The second one, in many situations, a prospective client will state the selected criteria, but be sure to include and address everything required. Cover absolutely everything, in other words. So then consider your proposal to be a bit of a story. Ensure that it logically flows from the understanding to assure your client that you understood their issues, their needs as stated, and what your sense is of what their needs are. Now, for some, you often need to develop a work plan. And how I do it is that I will set up the work plan as the first step after the agreement has been signed, so that you are able to start proceeding. And the work plan there is where everybody gets together, a client liaison is identified, so who's going to talk to whom and how often, and all of the, and I use RACI, RACI, so who's responsible, who's accountable, who has to be communicated with, and who needs to be informed. Now, for many other people, I know that they don't even write a proposal, they just call it a work plan right from the beginning. So it depends, again, on your level of trust and where you are at with your relationship with the prospective client. Remember the fees and the fees section covering your anticipated fees and other expenses, so that the prospective client understands what they will be expected to pay. And ask what type of proposal the client wants. There's no point in writing a tome when all they want was 4 pages. So clarifying your assumptions there as well. So stay focused on the project and define scope, even if you have spotted other issues. You could mention those and say, hey, you've got some other issues as well, but we see that, with this proposal, this is what we're focusing on. And if you like, we could submit you a separate proposal to help you with these other needs. If you were already invited to submit, don't oversell yourself, as the prospect clearly has some interest in working with you. And there you see, that's my mention of the fluff. Try to discover why they invited you, because you really don't want to be the fluff. And then emphasize the cost and benefit, the comparison of the cost of them hiring you with the benefits that they're going to receive from using you and your great expertise in your team. So then clarify, as I said, the prospect's expense policies. Ask them if they have some policies for their expenses. That can really help eliminate a lot of effort on your side. And be sure to align the entire proposal with your client's needs and expectations. There's no need to go overboard there. So that's my tips. What's your tips? Any comments or tips? This is where you can go off mute and jump in. And I can't see your chat. Anyone brave enough?
Sheila, perhaps we could go back and talk a little bit about where you look for opportunities to apply for, to put in a proposal.
Yes, and where would you go, Tamara?
I've had some luck looking at educational institutions where they have programs where they, support work within the community, or they have some sort of initiative that they back and provide. Sometimes they provide funding. that way. And of course, government is, is another one as well.
That's right, the buy and sell site. And we should probably put a link up to that. I'll try and remember to send people a link on that. Thank you, yes. Anyone else got any other ideas? Where do you find your opportunities? I'm very surprised that nobody's got any. I don't want to pick on anyone, so I'm not going to. But I would say that another opportunity that I find is that it is doing workshops. Quite often I will find, I don't know so much about today's session unless you want me to help you writing a proposal, but I do find that doing workshops in my areas of subject matter expertise is a way of showcasing what I do. In fact, back in February, I did a large conference where I was delivering some board governance training. It's a couple of hours workshop. And I got quite a lot of work out of that, actually, because even though I felt I'd given, everything away, but what it did was it made, I think, quite a few people that were participating realize where the needs were in their own organization, and they didn't have the resources or the willingness to do it themselves, so they hired me to do it because they knew that I could jump in and do the work straight away. So that was very gratifying. So it's not just going on sites and doing the cold calling style. It's also looking at who do you know, and I do find that I get a lot of work, and I'm sure quite a few people here get a lot of work from just word of mouth. And this is the more that you can elevate people's awareness of what your abilities are and what you're looking for, then there's more likelihood that you're going to be sought out. And don't do as I do, do as I say, but have a good website. Don't look at mine. It's making sure that you're promoting yourself in such a way. So it's the push and the pull. You want to pull attraction to you, as well as pushing out when you're submitting your proposals or, looking for RFPs. Any other questions or thoughts on this? I think some people left. It's like, okay, we got all those nuggets and we're gone. Hopefully that's helpful. Anything else you'd like me to clarify or go back on? Or anyone that would like to contest that their experience has been different? You're a quiet lot today. Okay, well, I'm not going to force anyone to stay on this. I've got a few comments, and that's good. I'm glad that I've been able to give you some ideas, and I welcome any feedback. And if anybody wants to contact me after, please do. So I'm going to pass it back to Rosemary. Rose?
All right, thank you, Sheila. So I hope everyone found that very informative, and thank you for participating in our ReSourceYYC Lunch and Learn. And hopefully you can join us for some future Lunch and Learns to get more ideas and do some more networking. If anybody's interested in possibly being a future speaker, feel free to contact us. We're always looking for people with great ideas.